Our region's business is sponsored by PNC for the achiever in you. Our region's business, improving our economy, creating jobs, and strengthening communities. Innovation, collaboration, transformation, and the people making it happen. Join us as we take a closer look at our region's business. Now, here's your host, Bill Flanagan.
Today on Our Region's Business, the science of scaling a startup. Plus, what's in store for our region as Great Britain prepares to exit the European Union. The ripple effects of Brexit, as it's called, are still rolling around the world, affecting financial markets and interest rates as investors seek to make sense of the vote in the United Kingdom. We'll find out more in a moment about Brexit's potential impact on our region. But first, a view from across the pond from someone who knows both the UK and our region well. Tony Griffiths is administrative partner in the London office of Pittsburgh-based K&L Gates, and welcome back to Pittsburgh.
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, good to have you. I know we're all scratching our heads here in America, and maybe not so much about the vote and how it came down, but about what the future really holds for London and the world.
Well, you can imagine that just as you're scratching your heads in the US, so people in the UK are scratching their heads as well, because this is uncharted territory, not just for the people in the UK, but also for the European Union itself. No country has ever left the European Union before now, and the mechanism that will eventually be used to exit from the European Union has never been used before. So this is going to be an interesting process, particularly interesting as the referendum itself is only advisory as far as the UK government is concerned. It is not a binding vote.
What, so Parliament really doesn't have to implement it?
That is true.
Huh.
So the consensus at the moment amongst constitutional lawyers is that parliamentary sovereignty is the key driver in relation to the exit vote. The referendum isn't binding on parliamentary sovereignty, and there needs a new Act of Parliament to be passed in Westminster in order to give effect to the referendum vote itself.
Wow. And so that would presumably fall to the new Prime Minister and a reconstituted Parliament that's part of the fallout from this?
Correct. And, you know, you have to bear in mind that the vast majority of members of Parliament are Remainers rather than Brexiteers. But it is politically unthinkable that Parliament would not honour the referendum vote itself.
So even if Parliament decides they're going to pass the Act, they're going to proceed, they're going to follow what appears to be the will of the voters, this thing is still not going to happen overnight, right? It's going to take time?
Absolutely right. So under the terms of Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which is the exit mechanism, there is a defined 2-year period from the triggering of the exit, which can only come from the British Parliament, to an automatic 2-year period in relation to negotiation of the exit terms.
Okay.
So we know it's going to take at least 2 years. There is currently a debate between the UK Parliament and the EU Commission as to whether or not during that 2-year period there can also be concurrent trade negotiations in relation to the relationship between the UK and the EU after the 2-year period is up.
Because we're going to have to establish all the new rules. It's not just how do we get out, but then what's our relationship going forward?
Absolutely right. So the British Parliament would like a concurrent discussion of exit and trade agreements, so that it can all be wrapped up in the 2-year period. The Commission is saying no. It has to be the 2-year exit first, and then we start the whole negotiation in relation to trade terms. So this could last beyond 2 years, maybe 5 years.
Unbelievable. 5 years. So part of your job running the K&L Gates presence in the UK is advising companies on dealing with all these global business issues. Businesses, as a rule, do not like uncertainty. What's that been like?
Interesting. And you're absolutely right. Business hates political uncertainty. And in fact, one of our clients, the day after Brexit, was advising all investors to sit on their hands until the political landscape had sort of evened itself out a little. Well, that could last for 5 years. In that 5-year period, what businesses will need to do is to sort of anticipate what the result of the negotiation is going to look like from a regulatory point of view, from a locational point of view. Is it going to be able to use the UK as a hub to distribute its goods into the rest of Europe, as it's doing at the moment, to distribute financial services into Europe, as it's doing at the moment, or will it need to establish a new location in the EU? And it all depends on the result of the negotiations.
Depending on how the trade agreements work out, it could be more costly to sell into Europe from London or not.
If the trade agreement doesn't affect full access to the open market, then there could be tariffs in relation to imported goods into Europe.
So to avoid that, then presumably the UK has to negotiate a deal that allows them continued access without the tariffs. But my guess is Europe would then have conditions for that kind of a deal.
Absolutely right. So there are a number of outcomes from the negotiation. The first outcome is a deal which is similar to the deal that Norway has, for example. So Norway is a member of the EEA, the European Economic Agency, and it has full access to the market. It's not a member of the EU, but it is bound by all the red tape and regulation of the market, and has no say in the future direction of regulation in the market. So it's almost a lose-lose-lose scenario.
And they still have to abide by the free flow of talent.
And they have to accept the free movement of people, which is one of the 4 key freedoms.
So free movement of people and all the rules and regulatory issues, that was the reason the Brits got out, right? Or why the vote came down the way it was.
And it would be politically difficult, I think, to come back to sell that proposition, although most people are sort of anticipating that is the way it might go.
Wow. Only about a minute left, but I wonder, so how quickly do you think, once this act gets through Parliament, is the UK going to pull the trigger on these negotiations?
Well, that is the big question. So the EU is putting pressure on the UK to pull the trigger immediately. The UK wants to hold off on pulling the trigger because it knows as soon as it does pull the trigger, it loses its negotiating position, and it wants to hang on to that negotiating position. So ideally, from the UK's perspective, it would like some preliminary talks before it pulls the trigger. The EU is saying that isn't going to happen. Okay,
because it's now all about who has leverage in the negotiation.
Correct.
Unbelievable. Well, certainly given a lot of folks in the UK and a lot of us around the world a lot to think about. Tony Griffiths from K&L Gates London, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Next up, bringing Brexit home. What all the global uncertainty may mean to the American economy as well as our regions. Stay with us.